Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at Adobe. It is time for another update, and on this chart we seem to be following through quite nicely within our expectation for this wave 4 reset in our white interpretation into the area of support. And this is probably one of the nicer trade setups we have. I would consider this to be quite a nice opportunity, although it certainly is one of the longer term plays. Now, we'll be discussing more about this today, as well as the area to look for a possible bottom, the area I would actually start considering to begin the accumulation zone, let's say. But before that, I would like to go quickly through the large time frame for any of you who might be new. And here in the beginning, we actually have quite a few options, so I could consider this to even be a series of 1-2 setups to have formed within this structure. And even here, another 1-2. Multiple options. Here could be a double 1-2, 1-2. Doesn't matter exactly in the end, in my opinion. And then what I would focus on more specifically is what happens after this additional double 1-2, 1-2 setup, where a third wave could be emerging. Now, of course, this is more for the bullish interpretation, for the bullish case, because honestly, I could track this all as a single wave A to the upside. I wouldn't need all these extensions. I would be able to find quite a few options in which the structure could be counted, but honestly, right now, these are so irrelevant. We are focusing specifically on the internal structure within this area. Anyway, and once we would have this pattern complete, we would be looking for a wave 4 correction. If that happens to fail, we would need to start considering the other options, the other structures that could form within this chart, but this is going to be many years away, and I wouldn't consider we should focus on that data right now. Now, within this structure, within this wave 3, this is the area of focus. Once again, we have been tracking this impulse where we have the wave 1, 2, and 3 complete, and we have been looking for a reset for this wave 4 for quite some time already. And within it, we are tracking an ABC pattern, of course. Now, assuming we would bottom within this wave 4 around the structural support I highlighted for you in the previous video, we could be looking for some targets for the fifth wave to the upside, although I wouldn't be looking too much as exact targets at these levels, but rather a suggestion of what we could really expect within this next push to the upside to occur. So firstly, we have here the 38.2% extension at around the $1,100 level, and we could next be looking at the 61.8% extension at around the $2,600 level. So yeah, we can have quite a nice uptrend still to be formed within this larger wave 3 before we would look for a substantial top. Even if it isn't a wave 3, I believe this is still part of the likely structure to play out, and that is why I believe this is one of the better trade setups to look for a position into. It's also within a very large time frame, which are typically more reliable to track. Now, within this structure, we have this ABC pattern as our primary interpretation. This is of course not the only scenario within which we can track this correction, this wave 4, but it is the highlight one, the preferred interpretation to focus on at the moment at least. And we would have here a wave A down, a wave B up, and now an impulse ideally within this wave C. And even within this, many options are possible within which we could find extensions. I don't want you to focus too much on a specific scenario, but on the levels of support and resistance that really give us hints about the details of a structure. Within this wave C, we have been tracking this as a wave 1 down, a wave 2 up, third wave down, fourth wave up, and then a fifth wave that would be expected to form within this area. Within this wave 5, we are looking for a 5-wave structure, and this is within our idea of an impulse to form within this wave C. And in this case, we had an internal structure we were tracking in the previous video, and I wouldn't say necessarily that it has played out too well. We actually broke the area of resistance for our previous interpretation, where we would have liked to see this to form something like a potential 1-2 setup and a third wave to continue in this larger wave 3. But it seems this wave C within our upside interpretation has forgotten to push the brakes and basically slashed right through the area of resistance and managed to form a higher extension. Now, is this a problem? Really not. It's within a smaller time frame, and what really is happening right now is that we have a lot more clarity of the interpretations we can track on this chart. So right now, I would not really consider this to have been the wave 1 bottom. I have still a couple of options within this idea, but it could be that this has bottomed in a wave 1 here instead. We would have here a wave 2 correction to the upside, and we would then need to adjust the area of resistance accordingly. and it would be all the way up to the $396.6 level. I didn't want to provide you an area of resistance for every single interpretation in the previous video. I wanted you to focus on the smaller time frame, but yeah, honestly, we needed to push a lot higher to actually manage to have a significant bottom within a fifth wave already, yeah, within the yellow interpretation, within the wave C. Now, the thing is, within this interpretation, we would actually need to assume quite a substantial movement still to occur to the downside, because we would still be tracking an impulse in this idea, and the ideal target for the wave 3 would be the $238 level at the 138.2% extension of the wave 1. That is quite substantial. That is below the structural support that I provided you in the previous video. Yeah, we highlighted here strongly these levels between the $260 down to the $255, where even though we may not form a significant bottom, a relief rally is likely to form from these areas. Yeah, they are likely going to aid us in forming at least a local bottom within this push to the downside. Now, clearly, the ideal target for this wave 3 would be far beyond that, yeah, just above this additional structural support that we have here around the $207, $205 level. Now, we won't focus too much on these structural support levels at the moment, but remember, these are areas, these are points in the chart that have created major reactions previously. Yeah, we have formed these quite significant uptrends from these points a couple of times already, and they're going to very likely aid us in forming a local low within the structure. Yeah, I know I'm repeating some elements, but I want you to fully understand our expectations here. Now, this is not the only interpretation, however, because even though this fifth wave could form an impulse, I am able to also track a diagonal structure to form within it, in which case this could be a wave 1 bottom, this could be a wave 2 top, and we would be within a larger wave 3 still, but this would be only an ABC structure expected to unfold. In this case, the area of resistance would shift slightly. Yeah, ultimately, I wouldn't necessarily focus too much on the exact details. Yeah, in this case, we would have had a couple of areas of resistance to track, yeah, even here within the internal wave 3 for an ABC pattern to unfold within this area. We didn't manage to break that one significantly, or yeah, in a sustained manner even. So this is also a valid interpretation that actually falls in line better with our larger time frame expectations to form a bottom around those structural support levels. So the ideal target for the wave 3 remains at the 138.2% extension of the wave 1, which is at around the $263.64 level, around that area anyway, and that is actually very much in line with our structural support here. So quite a significant point to form a larger reversal, a larger correction within a wave 4 before we ultimately continue in a fifth wave to complete the entire pattern, the entire correction, and the entire wave 4 in our white interpretation. So do we actually need to follow through once this third wave is complete in a wave 4 and a fifth wave to complete the correction? This specific interpretation, yes, but ultimately, if I am to zoom out and consider other scenarios, there are counts possible that would allow an early bottom. Oftentimes, we don't even form a fifth wave in a larger correction. Oftentimes, the correction does seem actually incomplete, and it could have been instead something like a WXY pattern, in which case we might form a bottom once we build this wave to the downside, once we actually get to those structural support levels. Yeah, I want to highlight very strongly these levels. I believe this is where we are going to be able to form a more significant reversal. We don't need to, but I am looking with high interest at this area. And now, if we want to even track the internal structure within this wave 3 for this ABC pattern, I will be expecting a similar structure to occur even if we were tracking the other interpretation where this would have been a 1, 2, 3. I would have been tracking a very similar structure within this pattern to the downside, in which I expect still continued downside. So that is why we aren't going to focus too much on a specific scenario within the larger time frame. We are going to focus within this structure in a smaller time frame for indications of a more significant bottom. We could achieve those by breaking relevant levels of resistance, and we would be looking for this structure to form a full count. Once we would actually have that pattern complete, I would be once again interested in looking for the initial 5-wave move to the upside, because even once we actually form a bottom, I cannot confirm until I get some evidence. I would like to see a break above relevant levels of resistance depending on how this structure unfolds. I would need to see an initial 5-wave move to the upside for confirmation to look for another 1-2 setup, for an opportunity for an even higher probability trade setup that basically is just that, a confirmation that a bottom is in place, that we have our initial 5-wave move to the upside that would expect a 3-wave correction, and then at the very least another 5-wave move to the upside. Now, to wrap up this video, since it is already getting out of hand, I believe I highlighted enough the structural support that we are watching. Yeah, remember, I'll do it once more, the 260 something dollar level. We have highlighted this earlier in the video already multiple times. You can scroll back a little if you want to write down the exact area. But within this structure, we are focusing on an A, B, C pattern to unfold within this area. I won't use this necessarily within the yellow interpretation. We can use this as an estimation rather, and we will focus internally here on a 5-wave structure to the downside. And at the moment, I am able to track an impulse within this area. Does this mean it must be an impulse? Well, no, but this would be the first structure to actually get invalidated. So here I'm focusing on something like a 1, 2, 3, 4th, and the 5th. Within this interpretation, I would expect to form here a top within this wave 4 correction. We could extend higher, not a problem. A 5th wave down, then another 4-5 to complete this idea of a 1-2 setup, and then another 4-5 to complete this larger initial 1-2 setup. Once that is complete, we would have a full pattern within this wave C, within the idea of an impulse, and I wouldn't need additional extensions lower, although I want you to be aware that even though we would have a full count, extensions are possible. Even though I may form here a 5th wave within this area, I could track it as a 5th wave. This could also be another 1-2 setup that would build a 5-wave move within this 5th wave alone. Yeah, such extensions are possible, and we will need to be aware of this. So we will be patiently waiting for confirmations, for signals that this is a bottom in place before we actually go ahead and call bottom. Now, do we actually need to catch the exact bottom? Well, no, and this is actually a trap many traders fall within. We can start considering an accumulation area. Within this structure, we have the entire area of support between the $314 all the way down to the $126 level. We can already look for the reversal for the 5th wave. Now, the internal structure is suggesting to us that we should expect a reset and continuation lower, but I'm telling you again, the count is heading towards completion, or what could be completion within a few interpretations, and we are heading towards strong structural support that I would consider able to turn the tides. Yeah, I misspoke earlier, it's around the $255 level, but yeah, it starts at 260. So within this structure, once again, I'm looking for continuation lower, and for this wave 4, we can track an area of resistance that goes up to the 50% retracement. I wouldn't expect this third wave to extend any longer. It does look complete. We do have a substantial correction in a wave 4, but I would be watching the levels of resistance from the $300 all the way up to the $314, let's say $15 level at the 50% retracement, and the break above that would not be necessarily a signal that this structure has indeed bottomed, but rather that it has failed to build an impulse within this area. So I would still need to look for continuation lower against the 61.8% retracement for the possibility of a diagonal pattern. In this case, for me, a break above the $330.5 would be the signal that a more significant bottom may indeed be in place, and that this structure would not really be expected to extend further, in my opinion. But for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.